Okay guys, let's get started. Let's build a time lapse. I'm actually going to go to Final Cut Pro in a minute and show you the video that you may have just seen, the everybody video for Monday. So a couple notes. One, you're going to see my screen in this video. You don't have to look at me. Two, I'm going to start from the point where we have the images from the camera saved to the computer. Actually, I've already imported them into a Lightroom catalog just by going to File, Import Photos and Video, and then pointing to a folder. We're making a video Friday this week, and you may have already seen that by now, depending on when you're seeing this, where we're going to talk about camera settings for time lapses on Fuji, Nikon, and Sony, because those are three cameras that we have handy to show that. So what I did is, let's go over to Final Cut Pro. In the end of this video here, when I referred to this video, how's that for recursiveness? You'll see this time lapse here that I did just the other night in a full moon. So it's dark and you've got stars. I've never done that before. I did it pretty fast. I did those comet trails, and I'll show you how I did that too. That may or may not apply to what you're doing, but if you're doing an astro time lapse, it's fun to do. And there's nothing that I did in the camera to get those trails either. That's all post processing. It's stacking up images that I've taken, and I'm using this comet mode in Star Stacks, which is creating those cool trails that end. I'll play that one more time here. I like that for a couple reasons. One, it doesn't fill up the sky, and then two, look at the bottom of the screen this time. The cars come, but they go away. So when you do a normal cumulative time lapse where you get the really long star trails, when there's cars and stuff, it just starts, in airplanes, it starts cluttering up the screen. With the comet trails, you get the effect of the star trails, but the far end of the star trails and the cars and the planes and stuff, it fades away. So you get to see it. I like it as part of the atmosphere, but you don't have to live with it all the way out throughout this cumulative time lapse, which would be really cool actually if you were doing something that was all night or evening through the night to sunrise or something like that. The screen just wouldn't get busy with all this other stuff. Okay, so this was our goal, was for this video to have a time lapse. So as I said, I went out the other night in a full moon. This particular one, I had the D500 and the Z6. This particular one was with the D500 and the 17-55 f2.8 DX lens set at 17 millimeters and f2.8. And it was the first time I ever used the D500 for astrophotography. Yeah, okay, cool. So let's go over to Lightroom. And we'll go up to the top here. So I'm in Lightroom. I have, let's go to the first one, and let's go to Develop. So here it is. And if we go to the last one, again, there's no trails either. That was all done in a process that I'll show you. There is this little plane here, or satellite or something flying. So let's see. So what I did, and what I want to show you how to do today, is I made some adjustments on this image. So yours would normally come in with all these straight down the middle. You can see the exact adjustments that I made. And so there's no right or wrong way to do this here. Make something that looks good. Now, one thing you will want to keep in mind, actually a couple things, is you're making adjustments. We're going to synchronize these adjustments from this single image all the way across all the images. So if you're doing something, mine under the full moon stayed the exposure stayed very constant. I was manual on the camera. I used the same settings. The first one is almost indistinguishable from the last one, except for the position of the star. So all the lighting and everything is fine. But try not to use too heavy a hand if your exposure is changing over time, because you might end up blowing things out. What I did with the Aurora Borealis time lapses that I've been putting together and that I featured in that highlight film earlier in the week, Borealisness, is it's easy to blow out the aurora. So I did my editing on the brightest picture in the time lapse that I could find, knowing that all the others would be dimmer, more conservative. So I made sure I didn't blow out highlights on the brightest one. And then when I show you the synchronized step in a couple moments, all the other images will get those same settings. So there was very little risk that I was going to blow out another picture. You can see here 6 seconds, f2.8, ISO 1250, 17 millimeters on that lens. Okay, so you'll make these to suit whatever you want here. And I don't like those for this. They're doing funny things on the horizon. The other thing that you could run into, and I ran into this on some of the Aurora photos, is if you're really getting into the noise reduction and lifting shadows and stuff, every image is different, and the Aurora changed very much over time. And I still don't know the exact slider or combination of sliders that was causing it, but I could get some flashing in the time lapse when it was finally assembled. In other words, noise reduction or smoothness or some of the things that I was doing on one image changed the overall illumination of another image. Maybe, I'm sure it was related to how far I was pushing the shadows in some images. And similar images with the shadows pushed led to a different overall exposure for the image. And gosh, as many as 6 or 7 of my time lapses I needed to redo. And with hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 images, that could be very time consuming on your computer. Okay. Now I have one image selected right now, and I made some adjustments to it. So what I figured out how to do, and I don't know if this is the best way to do it, but it's only a couple keystrokes, is I'm going to press Control A right now. That selects all of the images. However, the one we were on is like super selected. It's a slightly brighter selection color here on the screen. It's brighter than 12 and 11 and 14. When I click Sync, it's going to sync anything that I want, which is everything here, from the super selected one to all the other images. And you can see up here, it's pasting settings. Now, if I click anywhere, they'll all have the same settings. Let's go to 509. Let's just make the white balance crazy. So we're at 3950. Let's go to 41638. Control A, sync, synchronize. It's done. They all have that white balance now. Looks kind of neat, actually. It's a little more deserty than what I had. I had 3950. That was a little more normal looking. So anything you do, Control A. Actually, we were already kind of Control A'd, but I do it again anyway. Sync. There's a menu item for it, but there's this sync option right down here as well. And then synchronize. And now they'll all look like they are from Mars. Now, so we have all these images. Make sure they're all selected. File, export. And I exported mine to a folder called D500 output. I did TIFF files, and they're bigger than JPEGs. They're not huge from the D500. I did use the LZW compression, and my only motivation for using TIFF files is when I show you the final step in Photoshop, it's going to be making like an MP4 file from all the different images. If I made JPEGs now, it would be compressing them into the JPEGs, lossy compression into the JPEGs, and then I would be compressing them again into the MP4 or MOV file that Photoshop is going to help us create. So when I have the luxury of the space and it's not a huge amount of time lapses and stuff that I'm working with, maybe it's a little more superstition than anything, I use TIFF. I will do the LZW compression just to keep the file sizes down a little bit, but this is a lossless compression, so we're not going to get any kind of double compression factor from these images. If you want to use JPEGs for this process, go ahead. It's super easy to do. You just pick the other image type. You could do DNGs, but I think the process we're going to use, this particular process we're going to use in Photoshop, won't let you create the time-lapse video from DNG files, which I found a little bit surprising, which is why I ended up over with TIFF files. So you'll click export. Now pay close attention here. Don't click export yet. You've got to pay close attention to your numbering scheme. I have mine renumbering. You can do anything you want. You could go with the original name if you want to. However, if your original name rolls over your counter back to 0, it's going to be a pain in the ass. You'll have to I know how to do it on Mac. I'm not sure how to do it on a PC. You'll have to renumber your files starting like from 0 up through however many images you take, rather than if you start at like 9950 and it rolls back down to 0, Photoshop's going to get all confused. So you might want to use a custom name with a sequence like I have here. And if we go out to my folder, I've got something that looks like that. I may have renumbered these. Let's do it. Let's make a folder. We'll call this D500 2. I know I could be more concise with this, but I just want to show you my thought process. Yeah, I must have done this with Fuji because I did that. So let's do that. And well, let me make a bigger start number. Now, well, it's going to work anyway. So let's do this. Let's see what happens. It's got that dash. Export. Let's change my path. Oh, and I'm totally doing the red ones this time. I was going to change that back, or I was not going to use these files. So we're going to get these cool ones. This will take a minute. So we will let this do its thing. And I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, let's take a look at my exports. I like going towards the end. I don't know why. And there, I've got my Martian environment with my white balance change that I made. Now let's go over to star stacks. This is not a necessary step, but this is going to give me star trails. Now in the one that I did for the video, I used comet mode so that stuff would fade away. The star trails wouldn't be as complete. They would kind of trail. Sometimes I like comet mode because as stuff flies across the sky, or in this one, cars go by, instead of continually adding those things to the screen and keeping them forever, they kind of fade out as they go. Just to mix it up this time, let's not use comet mode. Then let's point to those images, the Mars images that I created. That was D500 2. You don't get to Control A on this, so we'll Shift select all the way down, click open. Star Stacks is free, and it will let you do some clever things. We're going to keep this pretty simple. Blending mode lighten, that's going to give us star trails. We won't use comet mode this time. And you do, on a dark night, you could shoot with your lens cap on to get the noise profile for the camera and have it subtract them. But we are going to save after each step. This is going to give us a growing cumulative set of images, all 515 images, with the previous one added to it. So we'll get these trails. Let's go. So let's clear out, because I did this earlier and I totally messed up. So let's clear out these. There, so D500 2 cumulative, that'll be my landing pad here. Let's just make extra sure. Okay, yeah, I gotta change my output folder. Now we're ready to go. And this will take a few minutes, so I'm gonna pause and I'll be back shortly. Okay, and you can see it's just finishing up here to go up to 515, and it's showing us the cumulative image. So a different effect than we had in the Final Cut Pro timeline video that I showed you earlier, because that had comet mode. This is leaving everything up on the screen from all frames, from the first to the end. 719 seconds. Let's go out to our folder. Sometimes I go too fast, I get my folders wrong, so let's just go out and make sure. Let's go out to the last image, and there it is. So we didn't have to do cumulative star trails. I can't emphasize that enough. But I think it looks cool. So when I do star trail time lapses, I do this much of the time. But if you're just doing a normal sunrise, sunset, some other kind of time lapse, skip this step entirely and go to this next step where we go to Photoshop. Because what Photoshop has the ability to do is to open a sequence of images. Now there's certain requirements. They need to all be in sequential order. If there's a gap in the sequence, you'll have to add a frame somewhere. Sometimes I just copy a frame if there's one missing for one reason or another. This is where PC and Mac are a little bit different. Open. Go to my fresh ones here. D502 cumulative. Click on the first image. On a PC, I don't think you have to hit options. On a Mac, you gotta go to options, image sequence. Open. Now you get to pick a frame rate. This is just how it's going to render the final video. It's not going to affect your images that go into it. They're all going to go in. It's just a matter of how fast it's going to play when it builds that video. I like going for 15, knowing that in Final Cut Pro or another video editor, I can speed it up to 30 frames a second, 60 frames a second, or whatever I want to. 15 gives me a lot of flexibility, gives me a good starting point. Let's click OK. And there's our Martian landscape. And you get this timeline down here, like a video editor. File, export, render video. Check your options here. 3840 by 2160, that's 4K. Everything else, I leave the way that it is. Sometimes I have to tweak that resolution. Sometimes it wants to go higher than 4K for some reason, which it won't allow you to do. So I then have to back it down to 3840 by 2160. Folder's good, and we'll call this D500 Mars. Render. This is going to take those 515 images and put them in a video. And it's just wrapping up here. This stuff takes a while, especially when you're working with 515 images. Obviously, it depends on the speed of your computer. This Mac Pro I'm working on is a few years old. So it is what it is. It helps to be working on something else at the same time, either on the same computer or on a different computer, or going outside and enjoying the world, or taking pictures. Okay, and it is wrapping up, and we're going to have this video file in just a moment. I think. There we go. And where did we put it? D500 Mars, that's where we put it, .mp4. Double click that. Let's check it out. There it goes, and it's creeping along because it's 15 frames per second. Obviously, you can change that either when you master the file or in your editing software. Those stars go and go. It looks very cool. It's a freezing night, so I'm glad to get something cool coming away from that. And with the slower frames per second, this one's over 30 seconds. Obviously, if you want to go faster, I think we went 8x in the video, so it would have been like 4 seconds, something like that. All right, folks, that's the overall. We'll be doing an hour-long training class where we're going to show you everything from camera capture through time lapses like this one, and ones that don't have stars and other types as well. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up in the very near future. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.